Namaste everyone, I'm your co-host Shravani ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is protective tissue epidermis. So in our previous video we had learned about the simple permanent tissues and the complex permanent tissues. Now moving on with that, we would be discussing today about the protective tissues, and under that we would be focusing on the epidermis, which is a type of protective tissue. So there are two main protective tissues. There are two main protective tissues. And what are these two main protective tissues? One is the epidermis, and the other one is called the cork. So today in this section we would be focusing on the epidermis, which is one of the types of the protective tissue. Okay, now let's see what is epidermis. So epidermis is the outermost layer. It is the outermost layer. Okay, it is the outermost layer of plant body, such as the leaves, flowers, roots, stem, etc. Okay, so the outermost layer of the plant body, such as the leaves, flowers, roots, stem, etc., is called the epidermis. So generally this epidermis, it is generally made of single layer of cells. Okay, so the cells are closely packed parenchymatous cells without intercellular spaces. So they are parenchymatous cells without the intercellular spaces. That is, the cells are very closely arranged next to one another. Okay, and then the epidermis is covered by a waterproof layer. This epidermis is covered by a waterproof layer called the cuticle. So this cuticle is the waterproof layer that covers the epidermis. The cuticle is made up of waxy substance called cutin, secreted by epidermal cells. This cuticle is made of what? Made of a waxy substance, and the waxy substance is known as cutin, that is secreted by the epidermal cells. Now most epidermal cells are flat. So if we talk about most of the epidermal cells, we can say that most of them are flat. Okay, so most of the epidermal cells are flat. Their outer side and the side walls are thicker than the inner wall, and the epidermal cells have long hair-like parts. So these cells, that is epidermal cells, they have long hair-like parts. They have, and this hair-like parts is known as trichomes. Okay, So in roots what happens? The younger parts are covered with a layer of epidermis without the cuticle, and that is called the epiblemma. So in roots, here we are talking about roots, what happens? The younger parts are covered with a layer of epidermis. The younger parts are covered with epidermis, a layer of epidermis, okay, that does not have cuticle, without the cuticle, and this is known as the epiblemma. Okay, now some of the epiblemma cells, they give rise to tubular outgrowths. Some epiblemma cells give rise to tubular outgrowth called the root hair. Alright, so this is about epidermis. Now let's see what are the functions performed by the epidermis. Okay, so let's discuss about the functions of epidermis. So first function is that the main function of epidermis is to protect all parts of the plant. What is the main function? The main function is to protect all parts of the plant. All parts of the plant from infection and desiccation. From infection and from desiccation. Okay. Then in very dry habitats, what happens? In very dry habitats such as in deserts. Okay, so what happens there? In such habitats, epidermis may be thicker. Epidermis can be thicker because when the epidermis is thicker, it protects against the water loss. To protect from what? To protect against the water loss. Then the epidermal cells on the aerial parts of the plant, epidermal cells that are present in aerial parts of plant, okay, in aerial parts of the plant, what happens? They secrete a waxy water resistant layer on their outer surface. Secrete a waxy and water resistant okay, water resistant layer on the outer surface, on outer surface, okay, and this helps in protection against loss of water. So this protects against the loss of water, okay, and it also protects from mechanical injury, then it protects from invasion by pathogen like by pathogens like from the attack of fungi, etc., and due to its protective role, the cells of epidermal tissue form a continuous layer without the intercellular spaces. Then the next role or function is that the root hair of epidermal cell help to absorb. Root hair of epidermal cells help in what? To absorb. It helps to absorb minerals and in the absorption of water. Then the trichomes greatly increase. The trichomes that we just talked about, these trichomes, they greatly increase the total absorptive surface area. Okay. Then in desert plants, the epidermis has a thick waxy coating. In desert plants, what happens? The epidermis has a waxy coating that is thick. Okay, and this coating is made of cutin, which is a chemical substance with waterproof quality on its outer surface, and this prevents what? This prevents water loss. Okay, this helps in preventing water loss. Okay, so these are some of the major important functions performed by epidermis. Now let's talk about stomata. Let's see what is stomata now. Okay, stomata. So this stomata, what happens is the epidermis of a leaf is interrupted at some places due to presence of small pores, and these small pores are known as stomata. So stomata are what? They are small pores present on the epidermis. Okay. So each stoma is bound by a pair of, so each stoma is bound by a pair of specialized epidermal cells or two kidney shaped cells called guard cells. Okay, so they are bound by a pair of guard cells which are kidney shaped cells. They are kidney shaped epidermal cells. They are present around each stoma. Okay, so each guard cell is a modified epidermal cell showing a prominent nucleus, cytoplasm and plastids, and the wall of the guard cell is differentially thickened. Okay, and the inner wall of each guard cell facing the stoma, so this each guard cell, what happens? Each guard cell, it is a modified epidermal cell and they show prominent nucleus, cytoplasm and plastids. So the wall of guard cell is differentially thickened. Okay, so the inner wall of each guard cell facing the stoma, inner wall of each guard cell that faces the stoma is concave. It is concave, it is thick and also it is rigid. Okay, and the outer wall the outer wall is convex. It is convex and is thin, and also it is elastic. Okay, so the guard cells are surrounded by variable number of epidermal cells. These guard cells are surrounded by variable number of epidermal cells. Variable number of epidermal cells. And what are these called? These are known as subsidiary cells. Subsidiary cells. Okay, so this is about stomata. Now let's see what are the functions performed by stomata. The functions of stomata. So there are many functions performed by stomata. The important function is that the stomata help in exchange of gases. They help in exchange of gases with atmosphere. With the atmosphere. With the atmosphere at the time of photosynthesis. At the time of photosynthesis and respiration. Okay. Then transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water in the form of water vapor. So this process of transpiration also takes place through stomata. Transpiration takes place through these pores called stomata. So stomata also helps in the process of transpiration. So now let's quickly revise everything that we have covered today. So today we have discussed about epidermis in detail, which is a type of protective tissue. So now we know that there are two main protective tissues. One is the epidermis and the other one is cork. Here we have discussed about epidermis in detail. So what is epidermis? It is the outermost layer of plant body, such as the leaves, flowers, roots, stem, etc. All these are epidermis. Okay. So generally what happens? It is generally made up of a single layer of cells. And this single layer of cells, these cells are parenchymatous cells and they do not have any intercellular spaces. So epidermis is covered by a waterproof layer called the cuticle, and this cuticle is a waxy substance. So the cuticle is again made up of waxy substance, and this waxy substance is known as cutin. Okay, so most of the epidermal cells, they are flat. Okay, so most of them are flat. Their outer side and the side walls, okay, so the outer side and the side walls are thicker and the inner wall, okay, so their outer side and side walls are thicker and than the inner wall. Okay, then the epidermal cells have long hair-like parts. Okay, and these hair-like parts are known as trichomes. In roots, what happens? In their younger parts, they are covered by epidermis that does not have cuticle, and this is known as epiblemma. So some of the epiblemma cells, they give rise to tubular outgrowths, and these are called root hair. Then we discussed about the functions of epidermis. So the main function of epidermis is to protect all the parts of the plant from infection and desiccation. Then in very dry habitats like in deserts, the epidermis is thicker. And why are they thick in deserts? Because this helps to protect from the water loss. Then the epidermal cells in aerial parts of the plant, they secrete a waxy water resistant layer on outer surface which protects against the loss of water, against the mechanical injury, invasion by pathogens like invasion by fungi, etc. And due to this protective role, the cells of epidermal tissue form a continuous layer without the intercellular spaces. Then the root hair of epidermis, they mainly help in the absorption of minerals and water. And the trichomes that we discussed are the long hair-like structures. They increase the total absorptive surface area. Then in desert plants, the epidermis has a thick waxy coating called cutin. Okay, and this cutin is actually a chemical substance which is waterproof in nature, and this is present on its outer surface, and this prevents the loss of water. Okay, then we discussed about stomata. Now what is stomata? So they are the small pores present on the epidermis. So the epidermis of a leaf is usually interrupted at some places due to the presence of these small pores that are known as the stomata. Okay, so these small pores present on epidermis is known as stomata. Okay, so each stoma is bound by a pair of epidermal cells known as guard cells which are kidney shaped. Okay, then each guard cell is a modified epidermal cell that shows a prominent nucleus, cytoplasm and plastids. So the wall of guard cell is differentially thickened. Now the inner wall of the guard cell is concave, thick and rigid, whereas the outer wall of the guard cell is convex, thin and elastic. So these guard cells, they are variable in number. Okay, so what happens is the guard cells are surrounded by a variable number of epidermal cells, and these variable number of epidermal cells that surround the guard cells are known as subsidiary cells. Then we discussed about the functions that are performed by stomata. So the stomata help in the exchange of gases with the atmosphere that takes place during the time of photosynthesis and respiration. Apart from this, the process of transpiration also takes place through these pores known as stomata. Okay, so what is transpiration? Transpiration is actually the loss of water that happens in the form of water vapor, and this process of transpiration takes place through these pores called stomata. So I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.